Live. It's just me flying solo tonight. My wingman, Dustin Hurst, is on the road. So he said, Steph, we're just going to toss you into the deep end here and let you do the show. Also, talk about a couple of these things. And I said, okay, I can make this up as I go along, hopefully. So, what you're going to see tonight, since I do not have my wingman, Dustin, with me, is how I actually do things on my show on KID. A lot of people think that I just get on the microphone and talk. Typically, I do. But what you don't see behind the scenes is that I have lots and lots of papers and research. So if you see me going through stuff tonight, papers, that sort of thing, well, that's because that's how I do it on KID, right? So one of these days I'll get like a Facebook Live set up on KID, and then you'll be able to see me running around like a chicken with my head cut off. Is PETA okay with that? Can I say a chicken with my head cut off? Whatever. Moving on. Like I said, I don't have Dustin here to control me, so we're going to keep the phone right here. And Dustin can text me. He says, knock it off. So I'm doing this all by myself tonight. All right. So here's what we're talking about. We are going to go over a couple of articles that IFF President Wayne Hoffman wrote this week. We are going to go over State Superintendent candidate Brandon Durst and his bill draft that was actually stopped in the Senate Education Committee. There's a lot more to this than it sounds. There's a lot more to it than the media's covering. We'll give you the rundown and the details you may not be getting from the usual suspects. Also, we are going to be talking about another bill, similar bill to Brandon Durst's, that is up for consideration. We'll talk about that. I'll tell you how you can win a Gadsden flag weightlifting belt. Just go to the IFF's social media pages, on Facebook especially, and take a look at that one. It's great. I'm going to tell you how to win. I love giving stuff away. It's the best part of the job. Because, we're a private industry, and we can give things away. Unlike government, because government often wants to take your money and they give it back to you and tell you that they're giving you something. They're giving your money back, right? So that's where we're going to start. We are going to talk about Wayne Hoffman's article. I got highlights. I've gone over this. We are talking about Wayne Hoffman's recent article, and he says there's a reason I wrote the first order of every legislative session is to cut taxes. Wayne says the money being taken from us is our money. Very true. We earned it, but collectively we're being robbed of it. Wayne goes on to bring up Governor Brad Little's income tax proposal. He says it's welcome news. As Dustin Hurst has said on the show, any income tax cut is welcome, right? Any tax cut is welcome, but we need real tax reform, right? So we're not saying tax cuts are bad at all. What we're saying is it could be a lot bolder. Wayne concurs. He says it's just not enough and not focused on the right outcomes. Now, if you remember, before the legislative session, Wayne Hoffman wrote some really good ideas about some great ways to spend this almost $2 billion surplus, right? One was to get the federal government out of Idaho education. Another was eliminate the income tax. Another was repeal the grocery tax. We're going to get on that in just a bit here. But let's move back to Wayne's article, and you can find this, of course, on the Idaho Freedom Foundation's Twitter pages, Facebook, etc., etc. Where are we at here? Okay. So Wayne goes on to say if lawmakers had spent any time deliberating on where Little's proposal, his spending plan, puts Idaho taxpayers, they'd realize it's just a fraction of what they can and should do, right? So here's what we're talking about. Idaho's income tax rate, corporate income tax rate, is at 6.5%. This proposal in the House bill, which went through the House yesterday, it passed. Now it's waiting on the Senate and the governor to sign it, which I'm sure will happen because it's been blessed by House leadership. But moving on from that, let's talk about the governor's plan. It would drop those tax rates from 6.5% to a whole 6%. There you go, right? I've done the research on this. Idaho's corporate tax rates are about in the middle, okay? There's a lot of states where they have way more ambitious tax cuts, especially with corporate tax rates, including Utah, our neighboring state of Utah. They're at 5.95% for corporate income tax rates. Idaho's is higher than that at 6.5%. I brought this up in my interview with Speaker of the House Scott Bedke yesterday, and he pointed out, well, okay, even though Utah's is lower than ours, we're just about to lower it. I think it'll go through. Well, great. Where was this? Oh, I don't know, a few years ago, cutting this corporate income tax rate. But now we're here when we have this huge budget surplus, and now we talk about doing this wimpy 0.5% corporate income tax and income tax rate. Moving on to Wayne's article. He's talking about bold tax cuts, right? Is this a bold tax cut? The Associated Press, the usual suspects in Idaho media, are really pushing this one, okay? Because the headlines, and I read this on my show on KID yesterday, are saying, historic tax cut, the biggest tax cut. When the usual suspects, like the Associated Press, are calling this historic and not finding fault with it, that means it's a wimpy tax cut, all right? So moving on to this, and Wayne agrees it's a wimpy tax cut. Well, like I'm saying, when the usual suspects say, hey, they're not finding fault, that sort of thing, that's when you know it's not the greatest tax cut in the world. But moving on to this, let's talk about bold tax cuts. Wayne Hoffman brings up in this article that he wrote, of course, which you can find, is a Wall Street Journal editorial board describing a bold plan by Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds to get a 4% flat individual income tax rate and a 5.5% corporate rate. Okay, editorial board of the Wall Street Journal says Reynolds' thinking has, quote, helped Iowa's economy and competitiveness, and the state is setting a good example for others. We're all about good examples, right? Wayne points out it's not just the economy and competitiveness that's at stake here. Wayne wants to point out, and he does this often, and he may comment on this right now, taxation is theft. We know this. This is what Wayne believes. He puts it in here, and he says taxation is theft. Plain and simple, right? He said the public should rally against how much money is taken from us. And he says that's the real reason why taxes need to be cut, and boldly so. He brings up an excellent point. Iowa, and this is funny. Now we're going to go off on a tangent, but I do this a lot. Iowa and Idaho, people get us mixed up all the time. It's true. You've heard it. People say, you're from Iowa? No, I'm from Idaho. That happens a lot. Funny that they're not getting us mixed up this time in the Wall Street Journal. What's happening is, and Wayne points this out, the Wall Street Journal isn't lauding Idaho's efforts because it's not bold, right? Not yet. Getting the tax rate to be as close to zero as possible, or no income tax, that's bold. Or, let's see, grocery tax repeal, that's bold. But we're not getting any attention from the Wall Street Journal, like our confusing, they think we're Iowa State. Iowa's getting all the attention here. Why are we there? Because this isn't a bold tax cut. It's 0.5%, guys. That's all there is to it. And Wayne points out bold is what Idaho could get to with a bit more work. And he points out it would require scaling Brad Little's budget proposal, or spending plan, as I call it, right? So he also points out Brad Little wants to put another $200 million into the state's rainy day account. The budget's also loaded with spending at a bigger level than he or the media have reported. And Dustin has brought this up the last couple of podcasts. And let me read this verbatim so I get it right. IFF Legislative Affairs Director Fred Birnbaum, financial guy extraordinaire, calculated that the governor's plan hikes government spending by more than 17% year over year. So that's what they're not telling you. I believe Dustin said on the show, a couple podcasts, a couple of sessions ago, is that they're telling us the spending is up 8%. By these calculations we have from the IFF, it's actually 17%. So if you listen to Physical Fridays with Fred, he can tell you about that. He explains it very well. Just, of course, go to the Idaho Freedom Foundation Facebook website, and you can find those. And in about 7 minutes, Fred will explain to you why this is a problem, where the money is actually going and why we're actually spending 17% year over year instead of Brad Little saying it's 8%, right? So he'll get the numbers down for you. So that's the latest article from Wayne. And while we are talking about taxes, let's talk about grocery tax. I had a chat with Representative Carrie Hanks today. She is with the Conservative Legislator Caucus, and I covered that when I was at the Capitol a couple of weeks ago. Conservative Legislator press conference. What they want to do is get rid of the grocery tax, right? And I brought this up on my show. I think we have 14 states that still charge a grocery tax. And of those states, Idaho is third from the top, right? We charge the third highest rates in the nation for grocery taxes, right? This should change. Carrie Hanks and the conservative legislators are trying to get grocery tax repeal heard. We don't think it's happening. And I'll tell you why. Scott Bedke does not want to hear it. He's the Speaker of the House. He was on my show on KID yesterday. We're not in agreement. I'll try and put that interview up on the website or play some clips on it my next Steph Lucas Live. But let's go over what happened with Bedke. He and I went the rounds on math. We certainly have just a different take on the math with this, right? So he's telling me essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, but when I get the interview up, you can listen to it. He is telling me, as far as the grocery tax goes, he's not a fan of repealing it. And some of his reasons are out-of-staters come here and buy groceries, and we need to charge them for that. So my first thought is, with that, is, okay, so because tourists come through Idaho, we have to punish all Idahoans to punish the tourists. Does this make sense to you? It didn't make sense to me. And then we get into it over the math. And I brought up some calculations a couple of people have presented to me, and I'm paraphrasing these calculations, but this $140 million in tax revenue, I believe you would have to have 85,000 tourists a day, $75, right, per tourist to create the kind of revenue that they're saying we get, this $140 million. Anyway, I'm paraphrasing. You'll have to listen to it in the interview. I'll get you clips for next time. And then Bedke counters with, and here's what I think he's saying, is that Idaho grocery stores might pull a fast one if we repeal the grocery tax. What he said was, he gave the example of a gallon of milk. And he said, so a gallon of milk is $2. Well, the store is charging you $2.12 because it's 6 cents on the dollar for taxes, right? And so he says, you already told the store that you're willing to pay $2.12 for a gallon of milk. So he's saying stores would just essentially raise their prices 6%. That didn't add up to me. I'm like, why would stores do that? That's not how the free market works. The free market dictates that whoever's selling the lowest price on milk is going to get more sales and therefore make more money. I thought, so are the grocery stores going to get together and have this big cabal? Is that how you spell it? Kabal, whatever. Anyway, and fix prices because it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But I'll get some clips of that for next time. And Bedke's saying he and I are on the same page with taxes and that Idaho tax policy should benefit Idaho families. Look, if we're going with Wayne Hoffman, who says taxation is theft, right? I would say the only way that tax policy is going to benefit Idaho families is to get rid of taxes or repeal taxes, okay? None of this, let's put it all in a big pot and then we'll redistribute it. That's not how this should work, right? And then I asked Bedke, I said, so there's a whole bunch of the majority of states do not charge grocery tax. Are you telling me they're making a mistake? He said, yes. Yes, they are. And they'll get you in other ways. And then he brought up Utah. And I said, well, Utah actually has a lower corporate tax rate than we do. They don't have grocery taxes as far as I know. So, point counterpoint with us, right? I'm just letting you know the synopsis of the interview. But no, Bedke is not a fan of grocery tax repeal. And this is so weird to me, guys. If you don't know this, and I've had several people explain this to me, but here's the story. Back when Otter was governor, okay, there was a grocery tax repeal. The deal was on the guy's desk. And long story short, and I tell you what, they're going to get on me about this later. Anyway, it was on his desk. This hullabaloo happens, and it never gets signed, okay? But the point is that there was a bill for grocery tax repeal that happened in Idaho at one point when Otter was governor, way before we had almost $2 billion in surplus. Okay, so if it was almost done before when we didn't have a huge surplus, why can't it be done now? These are the questions I'm asking. And I ask questions, and I know they raise more questions, but it's okay. You need to ask your elected officials these questions. And that's what I did in the Bedke interview yesterday. He said we would talk again, and I guess that's going to happen. So that's the synopsis. I'll get some clips for you, and I'm sure Dustin's taking notes, right? He's going to have me explain this a little bit better next time. But what they're telling me essentially is that is it impossible? It's impossible to lower or repeal grocery taxes. I just thought of something. I like fortune cookies. I know. It's a thing I have. Anyway, occasionally I will post on my messy wall here. You want to see? Messy. Right there. Little fortunes I get. And I just thought of this one. This is my favorite fortune from a fortune cookie. And this is what you tell people when they tell you it's impossible to repeal grocery tax. I know it's messed up, but this is what it says. Impossible is a word only to be found in the dictionary of fools. Putting that back on my wall. So when they tell you they can't repeal grocery tax and it's impossible, remember Steph Lucas's fortune. There you have it. All right. That's my rant about taxes. I hope Fred's taking notes, and then maybe I can run some corrections next week. Well, that's the synopsis I would give you on the Steph Lucas show. Steph Lucas Live carries over to that. All right, what else are we talking about? Got my notes here. I do this during the show all the time. People think I just open the mic and start talking sometimes, but I also have a schedule. So what else are we talking about? Okay. So this is a big deal this week. Brandon Durst, candidate for state superintendent of schools, had proposed a bill draft. It was stopped in the Senate Education Committee. Okay. And it's not just a shame because it was a good bill. It was also very strange about this because the bill from Senator Christy Zito was not given a print hearing. Okay. And my intel says that to not give a print hearing to a senator's bill is rare and almost unheard of, right? So that's essentially a lot of disrespect to Senator Zito. It's a good bill. Why didn't it get a hearing? Well, let's just go over the bill and see what's in it. It was called the Idaho Parental Freedom in Education Act, and it would have established the following. 1, parents have the right to enter a school building at any time during school hours without prior notice or consent. 2, parents have the right to sit in on their child's class at any time without prior notice or consent. Third, parents have the right to examine any classroom materials used in the school or in their child's class electronically or in person. Parents have the right to withdraw their child from any course material for any reason. Here's a good one. Parents have the right to not give their child medical treatment, including immunization or vaccines, if they attend an in-person school. So, doesn't seem like the Senate wanted to give it a hearing. I believe on the Hoffman report a couple of days ago, Wayne interviewed Senator Christy Zito about that. So if you need some more commentary, go find that on the Facebook page. Now, let's bring up, do I make a Star Wars reference here? It's not our only hope, okay? There is a similar bill up for consideration. I'm going to tell you the parameters. It's called the Transparency in Education Act. And the IFF says it is a well-written and thought-out bill. Let's look at the parameters. Main features are that it gives parents the right to evaluate school curriculum or education materials and meet with a school representative to discuss them. Each school must ensure students do not attend any class providing instruction in identity curriculum or critical theory curriculum without explicit parental written consent. Right? This is actually really good now that I'm reading this. This gives specifics, and if this bill is passed, it would mean there would have to be more specifics in the state of Idaho about what critical race theory is, that sort of thing. Because House Bill 377 passed last legislative session, and there's a lot of people, including Dustin Hurst from the IFF that I've spoken to about this. He doesn't think, and a lot of people don't think, House Bill 377 has enough teeth as far as defining and basically not teaching critical race theory. I mean, it's a start, right? It made big news that Idaho passed this. And of course, the headline said, oh, Idaho passes an anti-critical race theory bill. Not technically, right? It just says essentially, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it says essentially you can't teach that one group is oppressing another, that sort of thing, right? So fixing that might come up this current legislative session. And so this is good here that they're asking in this Transparency in Education Act that each school must ensure students do not attend any class providing instruction in identity curriculum or critical theory curriculum. That sounds good. What else? Schools must post all education materials online so they are publicly available to the community and parents. I love that. I think that's terrific. I'm completely behind that. Also, the bill, it could be up for consideration, says schools must send a written notice to parents and post on a school's website the rights of parents pursuant to this bill. And it also says parents have a right to access all educational records of a child, including behavioral records the school is collecting. This would pertain to social emotional learning data, which a lot of people have said is just a Trojan horse. Critical race theory, social justice theory, equity, inclusion, these sorts of things, right? Also says parents may submit written complaint for violation of this act, and the school district superintendent is required to respond and resolve the situation in a satisfactory manner within 14 days. There you have it. So that's good for parents. Looking forward to seeing what happens with this bill. Remember, the name of it, the Transparency in Education Act. So we'll keep you updated on how that is going. So that seems to be most of the legislative update that I have so far. Need some information about Wayne's articles. Of course, you can find those on the IFF Facebook page, Twitter, etc. One more thing I wanted to go over. As long as we're talking about education. On Wednesday, I spoke with Anna Miller with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and they are talking about IFF launching their Center for American Education. It's going to be a resource for lawmakers. It's going to be a resource for parents. They're going to have an excellent report I'm so looking forward to reading. Coming out soon, that they said is just going to blow you away with what's happening with critical race theory, other things actually happening in Idaho that many people in education and in power say is not happening in Idaho. I'm betting it really is. So we're going to take a look at that report. We'll talk about it as soon as it comes out. In the meantime, article printed by Caitlin Shepard, Center for American Education. And this is excellent. As long as we're talking about schools, I think you should take a look at this. The article title is Education Choice Generates Massive Cost Savings for Taxpayers. A new study shows, right? Let's talk about this for just a second. We're talking about education choice. And this is on my mind today because I had an interview on the show today with some parents, group of parents that are going to Boise on, I believe, later this week, and they're all for education choice, right? So this is definitely on my mind. And then this article shows up. This is great here. So a recent study by the Physical Research and Education Center at EdChoice shows that education choice programs from around the country have generated between 12.4 billion and 28.3 billion in savings for state and local taxpayers. How does this work? Well, the name of the study first is Fiscal Effects of School Choice, Analyzing the Costs and Savings of Private School Choice Programs in America. It looks at over 40 private education choice programs in operation across 19 states and, of course, Washington, D.C. So it analyzed some different school choice options like education saving accounts programs, 18 tax credit scholarship programs, and 19 school voucher programs. So all these programs save taxpayers between $3,300 and $7,500 per participating student, right? So here's kind of an explanation from Caitlin. These massive savings are generated by students who would have attended public schools in the absence of choice program. Here's where it gets a little bit tricky. I might need Fred Birnbaum to explain this, but I'm just going to read this to you. On average, the dollar value of a choice program, which typically allocates only a percentage of state spending per student, is less than the cost of educating these students in public schools. So when students switch to alternative education providers using this school choice program, taxpayers spend less money on those students, right? Here's a direct quote. The value of education choice programs through fiscal year 2018 was approximately $5,000 per student, while the average cost of educating these students in public schools was about $14,000 per student. Therefore, your savings. Fascinating article, right? So you have to check that out on the IFF website. Let me check my rundown today. Let's see. What else? Do I have everything here? I think so. I think we're good. I do have to talk to you about the Gadsden flag weightlifting belt. Now, you're going to go over to IFF's Facebook page, and there is a gorgeous picture of the Gadsden flag weightlifting belt in all of its glory. So if you want to win this thing, here's what you have to do. You have to text Steph, STEPH, just like it is down there on the bottom of the screen, to 208-514-4480 for your chance to win this very unique Gadsden flag weightlifting belt. And when you get it, you're probably going to have to take a picture of yourself at the gym wearing it, or I don't know, wearing it out in public, restaurant, whatever you want to do. But send us a picture of you wearing it, and we're going to post that on the website too. So excited for that giveaway. Okay, I think that's it for me. I hope I broke it down for you sufficiently. And if there are any corrections that need to be made, that'll happen next Wednesday on Steph Lucas Live at 7 p.m. Thanks so much for joining. I'll see you Wednesday at 7.